I am here with the brand new A Class. This is the newest member of the Mercedes-Benz family, and it is the new entry-level offering for the three-pointed star. And I do use the term entry-level very loosely, and you'll find out why in a minute. Now, since this is the entry-level product, you're probably wondering what price is. You can get a front-wheel drive version of this A220 for $32,500. If you want to option up to the 4MATIC all-wheel drive, that's going to add $2,000, and they'll have you right at $34,500. So under $35,000 to start for a Mercedes-Benz, it's really not bad. Now, in terms of aesthetics, this is a much more reserved design than you would see in something like a CLS, but you do see the same themes and design language carried throughout the product line for all these new Mercedes. And then from the profile view, we see that the kind of reserved design language is continued. There's not a whole lot going on the side. However, I will draw your attention to this part right here. This is the A-Class sedan. That's the only A-Class that we're going to get in America, and it's new for this generation in this model year. However, the European market and other markets around the world have been getting an A-Class hatchback for quite some time. Now, as we move around to the rear of the vehicle, it is again very reserved in design. However, you do have things like standard LED taillights and dual exhaust to accent the back. Now, getting into the trunk is as simple as kicking your foot underneath the bumper, and that is going to expose a massive cargo area. If that's not big enough for you, the rear seats do fold 40-20-40, and if that's still not enough, you have added storage under your trunk floor. The rear seat is also reasonably spacious, especially when you're considering the segment that this thing is in. This is one of the smallest cars that you can get, and this seat is positioned to where I would sit comfortably in the passenger seat. I'm about 6'1", I'm sitting behind myself. In the rear seat, I still have about 2 to 3 inches of knee room, but the big story is the added headroom. Of course, this has more headroom than the CLA because it doesn't have that sloping roofline. Now, with that, you also do have a panoramic sunroof here to make the cabin feel much more light and airy and livable. And comfort isn't the only thing going on in this back seat. You also have dual cup holders about here, you have dual climate control vents, and you have 2 USB-C chargers for your phone. Now, as we get to the front seat, this is where things get a little bit more complicated, so stay with me. We're going to start with something familiar, and that's that typical Mercedes fit and finish as we get going. Of course, as you can see, we have the typical traditional string of pearls vent styling. All of your leather on your seats is, Napa and very high quality. You have beautiful, genuine leather on the steering wheel. All of this is machined aluminum. Any wood that you're going to find in a Mercedes-Benz product is 100% natural and real. There's no fake stuff here, but everything in terms of design is very contemporary, and that contrasts with the look of the exterior. So it's a much more modern design, and that's reflective of the technology, and that's what we're going to get into next, and that's the big selling point of this A-Class. Now, as we get into technology, that's where you're really going to see your money go to work for you. This is fitted with Mercedes' brand new generation MBUX infotainment system, and it is killer. Essentially, this thing turns your Mercedes into Siri or your Google Assistant. Now, we'll start with how you control the system. There's a multitude of different ways, but the first and primary way for most people is going to be this pad here. Mercedes has gotten rid of their typical command-style scroll wheel for this kind of haptic feedback touchpad. Think of it as your laptop trackpad, but you have feedback giving you clicks and a little vibration from the pad when you're scrolling over each thing, so you know exactly where you're scrolling. This improves on the previous system once again when you consider that you used to be able to write things on top of your little scroll wheel. However, now you can write full words at a time rather than just one letter. Now, if the laptop trackpad style controller isn't really your thing, you also have 2 10.25-inch screens here. This one, your infotainment screen, is fully touch, and it's just as fast as your smartphone. There's no lag here. However, if you're worried about taking your hands off the wheel, you don't have to at all. You have 2 touch-sensitive pads on your steering wheel, one on the left and one on the right, and each one controls the respective screen. So your left touchpad is going to control your gauge cluster, and your right touchpad is going to control your infotainment. It's the exact same thing. You just slide to the right to go to the right, up, down, left. It's all the same. Now, I don't know about you, but touching, tapping, and scrolling sounds really, really taxing. So the thing that this Mercedes-Benz UX or MBUX system really, really shines at is voice control. You can control pretty much everything with your voice, and it's nothing as specific or explicit as, "Hey Mercedes, what's the weather?" You can say something like, "Hey Mercedes, am I going to need an umbrella next Tuesday?" And it will tell you what the weather forecast is. You can also say things like, "Hey Mercedes, I'm hungry." And this thing also has artificial intelligence, so it learns the things that you like to do. If you set your GPS to go to hamburger places all the time, it's going to take you to a hamburger place, or it's going to suggest it. And additionally, it will also pull up Yelp reviews. This is the crazy part. It learns that you like hamburgers. It's gonna pull up Yelp reviews. It's gonna take you to the best burger places in town. Now this MBUX system does a lot more than just show you where the next greasy burger is. This thing will do everything from navigation, climate control, ambient lighting, changing your song, and much more. And it's much more conversational than it was before. Previously, you'd have to say something like, hey Mercedes, set the climate control to 62 degrees. Now you can do something like, hey Mercedes, I'm cold. Not only will it sense that you in the driver's seat said, hey, I'm cold, it'll change your specific climate control. It'll also recognize the person in the passenger seat and change theirs. Now here's the best part, so hold on. While you're driving at night, you have the ambient light on. I had mine set to green when I saw this. I had my ambient lighting set to green. I was in the passenger seat. I said, hey Mercedes, I'm cold. It changed these two vents to red to let me know that my side was heating up. I tried the same thing in the driver's side. I said, hey Mercedes, I'm hot. And it changed these two vents to blue to let me know it was cooling it down for me. Now I'm going to demonstrate how we use the voice command to change the temperature, and it's going to change the color of the vent. Hey Mercedes.
How can I help you?
I'm hot.
I'm setting the temperature to 79 degrees.
It knows what seat I'm in and just adjusts my vent. Now, without diving into everything that this infotainment system can do, I just want to talk about navigation. That's something that we all use. It's pretty universal and we like it to work. This is one of the best navigation systems that I have ever seen. It's essentially like using Google Maps on your phone. Everything is so quick to respond on the system through the touchscreen, through your trackpads, whatever. Also, you can view your navigation system in either 2D or 3D. The details on the buildings, everything is so vivid and crisp. It's essentially like an augmented reality. You can drive probably through your navigation system. Obviously don't do that, but I'm just trying to get you guys to understand the clarity of this. Now we're talking a lot about the infotainment screen, but if you remember, there's another 10.25-inch screen right in front of the steering wheel, and that's your gauge cluster. But it's also much more than your gauge cluster. This thing is totally customizable. You have two bubbles. Obviously, typically it would be set to your speedometer and your tachometer, but you can change them through like 5 different things. You can also set your navigation screen to encompass the entire gauge cluster plus the right-hand side. It's really, really cool and totally customizable. Now, all this technology is well and good, but this is a Mercedes Benz. It's supposed to be luxurious, it's supposed to be comfortable, and it's supposed to be, ergonomic and fit into your life. And it totally does. This is the best, as reviewed by Doug DeMuro anyway, the best interior in the game. We're looking at you, A3. So you really have everything, to kind of fit into your life. All of the leather is there, like I had mentioned, but you also have the ergonomic things that fit into your life. You have a USB-C charger right here. You have a wireless phone charging pad right here. And you have a nice deep cubby with more USB-C chargers for rapid charging if you don't want to use your wireless pad. All right, so the first thing you need to know about this new A Class, the A220, is, well, really the engine. We'll start there. This is a turbocharged 2-liter 4-cylinder from Mercedes Benz, giving you 188 horsepower and a 221 pound-feet of torque. Now, those numbers may not sound like a lot, but the thing to remember with this car is that it's tiny, it's small, it's light, and for that reason, this thing gets going pretty quick. Here we go. It's so small, it's so tossable, it's light, it feels a lot sportier than you really expect because of the lightweight. The steering is incredibly direct and responsive. The suspension will firm up in sport mode. You have about 4 different drive modes, and in sport mode, it really, really is responsive to all of your inputs. You get a little bit firmer suspension, so you get a little bit more bump when you're going over things on the road, but you really, really do feel planted in the bends with this thing. Pull off. Happily revs very quickly. It's not a whole lot of horsepower, so you're not going to be, storming the Autobahn at 200 miles an hour, but it will get you off a line very quickly, especially with this 4MATIC all-wheel drive, even when it's snowy and cold like it is today. Now, one of the things that I want to mention, and one of the first things you'll notice when stepping behind the wheel of this A-Class is just the level of refinement and isolation in this cabin. I'm on a very bumpy road right now, and the camera's not shaking a whole lot. There's not a whole lot of interior noise coming into the cabin, and you really don't get that with, some of the other competitors in the segment. You definitely don't get it with, like a BMW, a Land Rover, Audi, Volvo, anything like that. So I'm really, really impressed that you get this level of, refinement, isolation, and all of this for under 35 grand. All right, and we're gonna have a little bit of fun here. I'm gonna take it through a turn. Pretty good clip here. Let's see how it handles. A little on the brakes. Brakes are good and responsive. Holds onto the line really, really well. That was a tight turn. And it's got the low end torque to pull you right out of the corner. This thing is pretty peppy. It's actually a lot of fun, for something that's an entry level kind of, base engine car. Now, when you think about this thing holistically, you are getting, some of the most cutting edge technology, some of the best luxury, refinement, design, fit and finish in the industry, and a fairly peppy engine, plus a good sized back seat. It's very comfortable. You're getting all this in a tiny package for under 35 grand to start. That's a lot of car for a little bit of money. Hey Mercedes.
How can I help you?
Change the ambient lighting to blue.
Okay, I'm changing the color.